The natty limit is a subject which fascinates many natural lifters and is fiercely debated within the community. So, do I think there's a natty limit? Well, I think in a purely theoretical sense, there may be a natty limit, but I also don't think it has ever been reached before in real life. And practically speaking, I don't think it's possible to get there. Just as a thought experiment, if you took someone and from childhood had them dedicate their entire existence to nothing but perfect training, perfect eating, and perfect recovery, I guess there will come a point where they would no longer be able to progress. I don't know if it would happen in their 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s, but I suppose that would be, in theory, the natty limit, at least for that person. The problem is that this thought experiment is completely impossible to actually execute in real life. We have no idea what perfect training and diet is, or whether it even exists. And obviously, we can't take a child and force them into some kind of bodybuilding slavery for their entire life. So this is why I think that the natty limit is only theoretical and that it can't actually exist in the real world. Even though we can't pinpoint it, I guess it is reasonable to narrow it down to within a certain range. So for example, if we took the previously mentioned thought experiment, I'm sure it would be impossible for that person to get to the size of Big Ramy or any of the other modern mass monsters. I guess it would be safe to say that the natty limit must land somewhere bigger than Steve Reeves, for example, but smaller than Big Ramy. But again, that's entirely theoretical and really not at all helpful. So let's discuss the natty limit in a more practical sense. I'm going to go ahead and say that in the real world, I don't think there's a natty limit. There are simply too many variables and it's impossible to account for all of them. This is great news in the sense that you should always be able to find areas to improve, even if you've been training for a very long time. A very common argument I see online is people saying that naturals make pretty much all of their gains in the first 2 years. And after that, you basically don't make any more gains, and that's your natty limit. But this is total horseshit on so many levels. It's incredibly rare that someone actually trains properly during their first 2 years. And even if they do, it's not like they will magically hit a wall and stop progressing. Sure, if you train hard for 2 years, your progress will slow down, but there's no way it will stop completely. Even if you just improve 1% per year after that, over the next 10 years or 15 years, those tiny improvements can add up to something incredible. And that's the thing, we have very, very few examples of natural lifters training hard and consistently for several decades. It almost never happens. And this idea of a natty limit could be one of the main reasons behind it. Because, let's say someone in their heart truly believes that they reached their natty limit. Even if they haven't, what are their options going forward? They can either stop training because they feel like they have nothing more to achieve. They can go into maintenance mode and never try to push for more because they just don't think it's possible. Or they can simply hop on drugs and push beyond what they perceive to be their natural limit. I think one of these scenarios happens to the vast majority of natural lifters after their first couple years of hard training. Ultimately, it leads people to having very low standards for natural lifters, and unfortunately encourages many to start using drugs without even scratching the surface of their potential. It's very sad, but somehow this idea of a natural limit has convinced many lifters that enhanced bodybuilding is simply the logical next step after natural bodybuilding. So many steroid users say that they only started using after maxing out their natural potential. But did they really? Or did they just use that as an excuse to hop on drugs as soon as they hit their first real plateau? I find it especially hilarious when you get people in their early 20s trying to say that they reached their natty limit. Like, if you're in your 40s or beyond and you have 20 years of serious training behind you, I'll believe you if you tell me you can't progress anymore. But if you've only been training for a couple years, you're either impatient or just straight up looking for an excuse to hop on drugs. Anyway, with all that being said, is the natty limit something we should actually worry about? I don't think so. You shouldn't fantasize about getting as big as professional bodybuilders, because it's just not going to happen naturally. But other than that, you have absolutely no idea where you're going to land after 5, 10, or 20 years of training. The only thing you can do is put the time in and try your best to keep improving. Once you get to a point where you really can't improve, no matter how hard you try, chances are you're going to have an incredibly good physique. What you don't want to happen is to let this idea of a natty limit hold you back from getting there in the first place. Alright, that's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and leave a comment down below telling me what you think about the natty limit. Thank you for watching.